Hello, everybody. I understand that this might be kind of late. I was having trouble with my other Chromebook, and it was doing something funny. It wouldn't let me go live. It had me go through all these things I had to, things that I had to do and connect software with it. So it was kind of silly. This book, I'll take one of these books down. Here. It was a little bit too high. Well, anyway, I don't know if you've heard about some of these things lately. Of course, I've entitled this Whose Life Matters, because it doesn't seem like ANTIFA cares about all Black lives. Because some things happened today and you might not have heard about it. Let's see. Let's go to this. Okay, we'll start with this.
There's a lot of restaurants that are feeling the pain of racism, where people are literally not patroning Chinese restaurants. They're not patroning Asian restaurants because of just straight up racism around the coronavirus. So, only in America does the president, when the president tweets about liberation, does he mean go back to work? When we, have this discussion about going back or reopening, I think a lot of people should just say no. We're not going back to that. One of I know it sounds banal. Do we know how long puppies are allowed to stay with their mothers after a dog has given birth? I don't. 8 weeks. Wow. So the market has decided that women and people who give birth deserve less time with their children than a dog. So the whole premise of the Green New Deal is that we're screwed.
So let's just skip right to 59. I just wanted to start things off with a little chuckle. I think every time I hear her talk, I just like, how in God's name can somebody like that get elected in Congress? To the Congress.
The coronavirus has made our lives unpredictable, but one thing you can always count on, the White House press corps will always ask President Trump ridiculous questions.
Question, Mr. President, should Americans have to decide between staying healthy and going back to work?
I was just checking on oil again today. I was wondering.
Oil?
Yeah.
Where is it today?
Oh, well. I was wondering if you...
No, where's the press? Give me the press.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
How can you ask a question when you don't know the press?
I'll look it up for you.
Okay, let me do something else. When you say the Americans were scared, though, I guess nearly 200 dead, 14,000 you were sick, millions, as you witnessed, who are scared right now. What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now?
So Howie did the opener. Howie is very sad today because his pug Gooner died. So at his feet in its sleep.
That's happening in Portland right now?
That's a myth that's being spread only in Washington, D.C.
About Antifa in Portland?
Yes.
Nadler.
Violence erupting in Seattle over the weekend, where at least 59 officers were injured.
In Seattle, officers clashing with rioters outside a police precinct just one day after it is damaged by explosives.
One person was shot just about a block away from this riot. 2 people are in custody.
Live from the Matthews Brothers Studios.
In our interview last week with President Trump, he questioned whether his Democratic opponent, Joe Biden, could handle a similar encounter.
Let Biden sit through an interview like this. He'll be on the ground crying for mommy. He'll say, mommy, please take me home. He can't do an interview. He's incompetent.
Well, this week we asked the Biden campaign for an interview, and they said the former vice president was not available.
Can you really blame them?
Mr. Vice President, thank you. Thanks for your time. Please come back in less than 13 years, sir.
All right, Chuck. Thank you very much.
All right. It's Chris, but anyway, we'll keep asking every week.
Well, good luck with that. Who's your captain? Howie Carr.
The fact of the matter is, our gun problem is related to the fact that that we have too many illegal guns on our street. That is hurting cities like Chicago. That is the thing that if the president really wanted to help, he could do today, tomorrow.
Are you always this stupid, or do you do this just to annoy me?
Unchained and
That was Lori Lightfoot, who's the she's the mayor of Chicago. And she's saying that the president could stop all the gunfire. No, there was a funeral and they were shooting at the people in the funeral. And then the people in the funeral were shooting back at them. It's kind of funny because it's almost like you would see in a mafioso movie. But how many presidents have we had that have done absolutely nothing about Chicago? In fact, we had a president that moved from Honolulu, Hawaii to Chicago to make that their platform and be a community organizer, along with Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and Louis Farrakhan, all these big leaders that, Sharpton, maybe he doesn't live in Chicago, but none of them did anything. But this particular community organizer went on as a junior senator, went on to be the president of the United States for 8 years. And this Lori Lightfoot, who's part Native American, part African American, she said that the president could just do anything, could just snap his fingers if he wanted to stop the gun violence and get all the illegal guns off the street. He could do it. And what I find funny is, well, do we really need to say it? Didn't do a damn thing. And he could have, if he did one thing, if he lowered some of the violence in Chicago, I would have voted for him for president, but I wasn't that stupid. Cherries, by the way. I wasn't that stupid. Yeah, he could have. He could have done something. In fact, with all his peace award before he did anything, and his speaking about nothing, he should have gone there and talked to the youth of Chicago and said to him, look at me, I'm African American like you, half African American, but African American like you. You can do this. In fact, Booker T. Washington, he went on to work for Teddy Roosevelt, and he was a slave. And he started Tuskegee University for freed slaves to go from being a slave to going to a university. Booker T. Washington. See, they don't like Booker T. Washington because Booker T. Washington said not only did he work with the Republicans, who were the abolitionists, who were the ones that abolished slavery. That's why they don't like Republicans. So, he said this. He said, don't be a victim. Yes, you were a slave in your past, but be victorious. Don't be a victim. Go on. Here's a college. I've opened up a college for you. And he hired George Washington Carver, who was also a slave. And he was a genius. He knew all about botany. And he became a professor there. And he had his students go to a dump because they couldn't afford all the things you need for a lab. So they found them in the dump. And he handmade everything. It was pretty amazing. So these were people who we don't hear, you're not supposed to talk about them because they overcame. Oh, look at my purple lights just went out. What the heck? Why the heck did they go out? There they go. There they go. I like them on. Why is it that the Democrat Party wants everybody to be, hi there, Mari, and hello there, Bruce O'Brien. If Lightfoot is better than Trump, why hasn't she stopped the trade on illegal guns and been locking up the criminals, they'd use them. Well, that's absolutely right, wasn't it? Why are they closing police, defunding the police, and they want to close the prisons? The only people that want to do that are people who are criminals. And there's a very interesting thing that happened that I want to talk to you about. But you see the overall picture here. You know, they pulled down Douglas's statue, who was a freed slave who worked with Abraham Lincoln to help abolish slavery. They pulled, and he's an African American. Why did they pull all this down? Why do they hate these African Americans who came out of slavery? Or, he freed himself. He ran to the North and was free. See, the slavery was just happening in the South, though the KKK did exist in the North too. There were Democrats in the North and South. It's because they knew that America was about freedom, and America was working towards freedom and trying to get rid of slavery. And the whole idea of America, they were pro-American. So if you're pro-American, just like if you're Black and you're pro-Trump, you're not Black. Your statue is pulled down. And there's something very interesting about now why are they Abraham Lincoln? Why are they? Well, a part of it being a communist thing to do is to destroy the past. So that means you destroy all the heroes of the past. Doesn't matter what color they are, but they are adherents to the old way, which is America and freedom. And the new ways is Marxist. Well, let's see if Howie's going to listen to Howie tell you what Antifa did.
You don't protest against this country. We've given you the opportunity to make a living playing a sport that you never thought would happen.
Rump swabs, hats,
right.
And moonbats beware. It's Howie Carr.
Welcome to the Howie Carr Show. Thanks for joining us. If you'd like to come on board and talk, the number, as always, is 844-500-4242, 844-500-4242. And in case you haven't heard, there's a new wave of hate crimes in the United States. A Black vocal Trump supporter in Milwaukee was gunned down. No suspects. And in Portland, Oregon, a Trump supporter, a Black conservative who goes by the name of Black Rebel on social media, he was stabbed by an Antifa member who turns out to be a convicted child pornographer by the name of Blake David Hampe. If you'd like to look him up, his BOP number, Bureau of Prisons number, is 11116-036. And he's not to be confused with the rolling protester in Jackson, New Hampshire, Chris DeVries. He hasn't been convicted yet of child porn. He's an Antifa organizer.
Another one. How about that?
Conway area, and he's been charged on child pornography charges. He's pleaded not guilty. So
of course,
that's
not
your
guilty.
Antifa child pornographer hate crime update of the day. But it's early. It's early. We may have updates as the time goes on. Grace, welcome.
Well, Howie usually is very cheery, except what happened. His pug died over the weekend, and she was 19 years old, and she loved him, and she used to lay at his feet every night and wake him up at 5:30 in the morning to go take her out for a walk. And he woke up at 6:30, and he realized that Gooner, the dog's name was Gooner. Hi there, Shilly Billy. Didn't wake him up at 5:30, and so he touched her with his feet, and she didn't move. So he's really kind of down today. And of course, I sent him some nice text messages to cheer him up. But Isn't that interesting that Antifa, we have confirmed that Antifa has pedophiles, and one is convicted, and one of them stabbed a Black Trump supporter. So this is what we need. We need to defund the police and close the prisons. Why? Because these people want to continue being pedophiles, or whatever kind of crime that they do, whether it be incest or rape or mass murder. They would like the prisons closed. So it makes a tremendous amount of sense. When you have the Democrat Party, who is a party of slavery and Jim Crow laws, and keeping a certain segment of the population, which included not just Africans, but Italians and Greeks, certain people that they considered Black, not Mexicans. They were considered white until about 1980, it was changed. But by law, they were considered white. So not them, but these certain groups they had to keep down. And also Republicans. If you were a Republican in the South, you were lynched. Anybody who was against the idea of keeping a certain segment of society a slave, even now, you are a slave. You're killed just like they lynched people who were against the Democrats. And they use criminals. Of course, only criminals would go out and kill people like that, lynch people, stab people, shoot people. 2 Black people, one in Milwaukee and one in Portland, Oregon. And one had just been on TV and talked about being Black and being a Trump supporter, which is a very bad thing to do. You cannot come out and be Black and be a Trump supporter, because the Democrat Party still wants you on the plantation. They're doing the exact same things as they did when there was slavery. And then after slavery, the Republicans, Civil War, abolished slavery. What happened? They had Jim Crow laws. They still tried to keep them segregated and submissive. Do as we say. We're still in control over you. And if you're going to be free, we're going to kill you. And so these people are criminals. The members of the KKK were criminals because they went out and they lynched people, whether they be white Republicans or freed slaves or Italians, Southern Italians or Greeks, whoever they considered Black, they killed. So the Democrat Party is the party of evil, and they will do, you heard a snippet of Jerry Nadler talking, and he looks like he's been dead for a long, long time. To me, he doesn't even look like he's alive, and he looks like he's made out of rubber. And they asked him about Antifa and all these riots, because these riots are still going on in Portland, Oregon. It's been going on for 2 months. In Seattle, it's still going on. So why is it going on? It's because to keep us in fear. First, we're controlled because of this COVID thing. As it turns out, more and more people who were in line to get tested for COVID in Florida, line in cars. And then they said to themselves, look, we're just going to leave. It's been too long. We've been waiting for 2 hours. It's boiling hot. And they left. 2 weeks later, they get something in the mail saying that their test came out positive, which means they're faking all of this. And a lot of people in Florida are coming out and saying this. Fortunately, I've been in the basement with a lot of mildew. And my gas mask that I use when I go down there, because I have severe asthma, I didn't realize something popped off on the inside, which means it's not blocking the mold. And plus, I've been mowing the lawn, and I'm allergic to grass clippings. So even though I went to the store today and I bought some antihistamine, and I took 2 of them instead of 1, it's still not helping. So you can hear that my voice is just not going to be great for a little while, because I have to be a good girl and take all my medicine. I have to take so much medicine. Why does the asthma medicine work? It's like, why is it that this medicine, I take about 4 prescription medications for asthma, that should work. I shouldn't have to take anything else. Well, anyway. So they're keeping, and here I am going in the hot. It's hot, and I'm sweating, and I'm wearing this stupid mask that's just filling up with sweat and my breath. You know, your breath is wet. And then last time I streamed, I told you about that person who got Legionnaire's disease. They thought it was COVID. 3 experts in the hospital said it was COVID. And it turned out to be Legionnaire's disease that she caught from her own mask because the bacteria starts growing. And that I had, the first time I wore a mask months ago, going downtown, and I was sweating and the mask was wet. And I thought to myself, I'm breathing in. This is, with the heat, it's incubating bacteria. I could get sick from this. And lo and behold, it does turn out that yes, you can get Legionnaire's disease. Also, you can get pneumonia, because pneumonia is in our bodies. It's in our mouth, little bits of it. What happens, it overgrows. And then when we're lying prone, it goes into our lungs. That's why elderly people who don't do much and they lay down a lot are more prone to getting pneumonia. But it happens in your mouth. And they say that, because I used to take care of elderly people, you brush, even whether they have teeth or not, you brush the inside of your gums, your whole mouth, and then you rinse it with this prescription mouthwash, or get a good mouthwash. And that's a good way to keep that bacteria down. But that's if you're not wearing a mask all day. If you're wearing a mask all day, I should get checked for pneumonia. Hey, this isn't asthma. No, it's not the lawn clippings or even the mold in the basement. As it turns out, you have Legionnaire's and pneumonia. No, pneumonia. As it turns out. But you see that the same tactics of the KKK, the Democrats who opposed the 13th and 14th Amendments, opposed filibustered civil rights twice, and including in 1964, Robert KKK Byrd, who was the Grand Exalted Cyclops of the West Virginia KKK, who died in 2011, and Obama eulogized him, and did Bill Clinton, and Obama put his statue up in the Capitol Rotunda, a bronze statue. So why isn't Antifa pulling that down? Because they're all the KKK. This is still the KKK. They're still using these tactics. Jerry Nadler said, oh no, totally denies that that this is even happening, that these riots are happening. And we're seeing them burning down cities and burning cars and beating people up. And there's a little snippet that I saw today of a young girl, and she looked like she may have been half black and maybe half white or half Puerto Rican. And a boy was beating her up, and she was dressed really pretty, say maybe about 12 or 13 years old. And he threw her to the ground and kept beating her. And it's because she was a Trump supporter. And so you can't do that. Even though here's a person who's of mixed race, you can't do that. This is, you see, the black people are leaving the plantation. Because they couldn't control the fact, they wanted to secede from the Union. They wanted their own country. And Abraham Lincoln didn't get one vote from the South, not one vote. So they didn't consider him their president. Does this sound familiar? The South, the Democrats, did not consider Abraham Lincoln as their president. So what they did was they enacted Jim Crow laws to segregate and control the black people and people of mixed race, like the Melungeons, who Elvis Presley was. And another famous Melungeon, who Elvis Presley on his father's, everybody looks at his father and says, no, he must be really totally white on his father. He's actually not. The names, because if you are mixed, you don't marry somebody that's not mixed, somebody who's pure white, because it was too difficult to live segregated. The police didn't help you. And you clearly you couldn't live in certain parts of the town. You couldn't drink out of certain fountains. You couldn't marry, if you were white, you couldn't marry someone who was mixed. So Elvis would have to have, his parents would both have to be mixed, because that was the law of Jim Crow South. Well, his father was related to Abraham Lincoln. So see, this all connects with Abraham Lincoln. So what they did was by enacting these Jim Crow laws and controlling this population and keeping them afraid. You know how these riots are going on at night? It's nightly riots. And they start throwing things at firecrackers, and they start burning down the city and lighting things on fire. Oh, what did the KKK do? Well, they rode in on horses, of course, and they lit crosses. They started burning, and they would burn barns down. People who were Republicans or mixed race or were black, they would burn their homes down, and then they would take them and hang them up and strangle them or lynch them. And this is what's happening. So these white people we hear about getting beaten up, and these black people, well, the man who was stabbed in Milwaukee, they say isn't dead. They thought he was dead, but he's not. The one that was shot definitely is dead. So they're killing people who are leaving the plantation because they were assured of 92% of the black vote all the time. Well, they're leaving the plantation. And so they go, what these riots are doing, it's happening at night. They're burning things down. They're killing people. And they are making us scared. If Joe Biden gets elected, clearly the man is not here in this world at this time. If he gets elected, we know that there's someone else running the show. I made a video about this. In fact, it was 6 months ago. Who's going to run the show? That person who's running his campaign, that's who's going to run the show. The Democrat Party itself is going to run the show. And they're telling us either if you stray, we know if you're a Trump supporter. And this is what we're going to do to you. The COVID thing was kind of like when you tenderize meat. You make someone submissive. And since we are law-abiding and we do care about people getting sick, we followed it. And we're still following it because we can't go against science. You know, we went against climate change, right? Things didn't make any sense. Okay, then how come if we have all these regulations and taxes, why did you do this to drive all our manufacturing out of a country that has regulations and taxes for climate, for emissions on carbon emissions. So all these companies would either go out of business or move to China and India and Africa and Sri Lanka and several other countries, and Indonesia, all these other countries where there is no regulations on carbon emissions. Why would you do that? That's a bigger part of the world than the Western world, which has all the regulations and the taxes. The third world is much larger, and they don't have any regulations. So if you care about this, and this is so important that not one bit of carbon, that we must abort our children and stop having children because we are killing the environment, then you've got the third world where there's billions of people in India and there's billions in China. I mean, that have set up shop to make crap. See, like this kind of crap that's behind me? This came from Amazon. See those flowers? All this stuff all came from Amazon. Crap that we never thought we needed. And then it was really inexpensive. And I'm saying to myself, I would have never bought any of this crap. I would have never think to have bought any of this crap if Amazon didn't exist. And I bought myself a box of surgical masks because they're so light, it's easier to breathe, use them to breathe. And I opened the box and the instructions, like this, they were all in Chinese. They were all Chinese content. Do I really? Okay. We're wearing this because of a virus that came out of China. So I'm using these masks because to stop a virus from China. The thing is all in Chinese. It's like even fortune cookies have American or English, written in English. I guess I have to do it. What else do we have? So we have the new KKK. And you see, the really interesting thing is how Antifa and BLM, you say, who's running this show? Well, we know who's running this show. BLM met in the White House with Obama like 160 times. Okay. And then when he left the White House, he says, I'm going to never leave Washington, D.C. I'm buying this building. Where did he get all this money to buy 5 houses that are $15 million each? Where? And I'm going to stay here because I'm going to run the show, and I'm going to make sure what I did isn't going to be eradicated. And I'm going to make sure Trump isn't reelected. I'm going to funnel money to groups all over this country. He actually came out and said it. This isn't like I heard this on somebody who's conservative. No, this was actually him. So if you wonder who's behind this, I'm sure it's him and a bunch of other people. But he came out and announced that it was him. So why should I think that it's somebody that's hiding in the shadows? It's him. It's Soros. We know that. That comes out in the news. We know that. Which is even more interesting. Now, this is what I was thinking. Came on to me like a flash. Well, let's get on to Antifa, anti-fascist. The funny thing is about that is that Hitler, when he was forming his little, I heard somebody say, it was a Democrat. Oh, Hitler took over fascism and ruined it. Really, it was Hitler that ruined fascism. Otherwise, it'd be a really good thing. It was like somebody in Hollywood. It was like one of those stupid people from Hollywood. It wasn't Ocasio-Cortez. She's pretty darn stupid. But anyway, he was told, because we have all the paperwork was just released from Germany that we never knew before, that they recorded everything, because the Nazis never thought that they were going to be out of power for any period of time. And in one of their meetings, it said, how do they control the Jews? How do they control the Catholic? Anybody who's not going to put the Nazi Party first, which is the gypsies, the homosexuals, Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, the Jews, anybody who didn't make the Nazi Party their God. How do we do this? And one of them said, do you know that in the South in America, they have these laws called Jim Crow laws, and they control the population, the freed slaves and descendants of freed slaves, and anyone that they consider as not white. Well, what are these laws? How did they do it? Hitler got his ideas from the Democrat Party and the KKK that went out at night and terrorized people and killed them. Well, he had his brown shirts who were thugs, who were criminals, who were young, who were out of control, to go. And what they did was they went out at night and they beat people up and they terrorized anybody who was against the Nazi Party. The KKK went out and terrorized anybody who was against the Democrat Party, not the KKK, the Democrat Party. Same thing. This is where he got his idea. And so the ANTIFA loves Stalin and Lenin and everything like that. Well, they had the Red Army. Same thing. The same thing, like we have Antifa, BLM. He had the brown shirts, Hitler had the brown shirts, and then Mao had the Red Army. Same thing. The young people, the thugs, the criminals went out and terrorized the people. The people ended up committing suicide. They dug up graves. They destroyed artwork. They destroyed poetry. They destroyed the history of China. Everything, especially the elderly. You want to kill off the elderly because they remember the past, which also brings me to something else I've thought of today. Well, looking at the situation that I'm in with my father, they want to put him on hospice. And does it make any sense? They let him go. He had an infection that they let go for over a month and never told us. And so he ended up getting sepsis. And now they're saying that I should put him on. They're very negative about him living. Oh, he's just not living up to our levels. What levels? This is for people who are not well and weak. You know, it's like that's why he's here. What levels are you talking about? But then she talked about hospice. Oh, but hospice would be great because you'd be able to visit him, but you still have to wear a mask. And I still have to wear a mask because you don't want him to catch, oh, God forbid he catches COVID while you're killing him. It's insanity. But I go, why? My father's a veteran. I said, well, should I move him to the VA or the soldiers' home? And for some reason, this COVID thing went like wildfire through the VA and the soldiers' homes and killed off, and it's continuing to kill them off. They can't seem to get it out of the soldiers' home and the VA. And also, you might know about New York and several states, that in my state, the nursing homes gave lots of money to the governor and lots of money for their campaign. And the governors put COVID patients into the nursing homes and to basically what? Kill them off? The most vulnerable population? Because under 50, it's like in my state, people under 50 who've died of COVID, 169. That's not that much. Under 20, 0. But we have to keep the schools closed, right? I'm thinking to myself now, who votes Republican usually? Well, it's usually the people in nursing homes, right? Usually it's the soldiers, right? The people who are patriotic, right? So where do you have COVID spread? Where are the good places to make sure this actually spreads? Like when you've got a kid who has chickenpox, they have chickenpox parties. Because if you get chickenpox when you're an adult, you could die from it. But as a child, you get over it, then you become immune to it. Later on in life, you might develop shingles, but they come and go, and there's a shot for that now. So what they would have is chickenpox parties. So if the kid had chickenpox, all the kids from school would come to that party so they could catch the chickenpox, and therefore they would become immune to the chickenpox, and they wouldn't get it when they were adults, and that would really save their lives. So, but if you have a disease that you know is going to kill a certain vulnerable population, and that particular population votes, first of all, they vote. You're assured that they vote, and they usually vote Republican. And seeing what the Democrats are doing, they're destroying America as they knew. Even the old-time Democrats who were clueless about the KKK, and they just thought Kennedy and America, because Kennedy was very pro-America. He really was. He was a very pro-American president. And you couldn't get elected if you weren't pro-American. For all of a sudden it changed. The last administration, it was you're better if you're against America. All of a sudden everything changed. You couldn't get elected whether you was Democrat or Republican. You had to be pro-America. They're even accusing Trump. They keep accusing him of being against the Constitution. What are you talking about? You're trying to destroy the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. But let me get to what do you call it? A satori. So they say in Japan they call it a satori. It dawned on me. I was reading about the debate between Frederick Douglas and Abraham Lincoln when he was running for president. And Frederick Douglass called him, he'll be your first African president. He said that about Abraham Lincoln. Was it because he wanted to free the slaves? Well, Abraham Lincoln was extremely dark-skinned. He had blue eyes. And his features were classically Melungeon. That's why they believe he's a Melungeon. Melungeons actually beat out Obama on biracial. He's biracial. He's 50% white, 50% African. Not African American, African. Abraham Lincoln had 3 races. If you are Melungeon, you're Native American, you're African, and 1/3 of each. So there's less white in you and more non-white in you. And it dawned on me, who would want to eradicate the memory of Abraham Lincoln and all his statues more than anyone else in this country? And who would rather, and what party would like to take credit for having the first African-American president? Well, the Democrats. Who would want to eradicate the memory of Abraham Lincoln that freed the slaves, that did something that Obama never did? He didn't do anything about, he came out of Chicago. Well, he moved to Chicago to be with the leaders of the Black community, Jesse did, that have basically done nothing for the Black people and not stopped this massacre that happens every weekend. He went there for his creds, basically just for creds. And he didn't do a damn thing about it. He didn't even talk with his talking skills. He didn't even talk about it. Or talk to them to get them to stop shooting. So look what I became. You can do this too. Come on, I can see you're intelligent. And then pick something, watch the kid and see what and try to find something that they're doing that has some kind of talent, some kind of gift. And talk to them for a little while and say, oh, I can see you're very perceptive about such and such. That means you have a keen intellect and you would do well in college. You would do well. In fact, I think you can make a great president. You say stuff like that. You see, I can think of that in 2 seconds. I wasn't even thinking, why didn't he do that? He didn't do that at all. He didn't do anything. In fact, the inaugural parade, when he first was inaugurated, from Chicago, the majorette who led the band, she was African-American. She was 14 years old. And she had the highest marks in school. They said this girl was a genius. She was going to go on to do something great. She went back right after that, the inauguration parade or the inauguration. She went back to Chicago and was killed by a stray bullet. Yeah. Did Obama go to Chicago and stop the killings then? And then a week later, a 13-year-old boy was killed by a stray bullet. And wasn't it a baby sleeping in his bed, in his crib, in his house, was killed by a stray bullet just this week? Obama never said anything about it. He never tried to stop it. He didn't free any slaves, and he didn't stop the violence in Chicago or anywhere else. In fact, he's behind all these groups that are creating violence. Because when I first saw this man and his family, and how the Democrats dressed them up, it really made them look like the Kennedys. If you think about the way Michelle Obama dressed, she really did dress like Jackie Kennedy. I said he's the combination of the Kennedys and Martin Luther King, or this is what he's trying to sell himself as. Immediately I thought that he's not going to try to eradicate the little bit of racism that's left. And there's just this little bit of KKK that basically has been abolished by law in this country. I said to myself, he wants to be the new John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King. But to do that, you've got to create discord. You have to create racism. You have to claim that there's racism. And most of the countries, when he was voted in twice by a white majority, how could there possibly be there's racism, but not racism out of hand. Now there is more racism because the hatred is against Trump supporters. And Trump supporters are not racist at all whatsoever. He is not racist at all whatsoever. In fact, he's the one who destroyed segregation in Palm Beach by suing the city because he wanted blacks and Jews and minorities and homosexuals to be able to come to his Mar-a-Lago and own parts of it. So he said, look, I'm not going to, politics takes too long. Paying a politician takes too long. They keep wanting more money. You have to keep voting them back in. So he just sued the city for $75 million and won. So he destroyed. He's the only one, if you're going to say anybody did anything, he's the only one. And he received an award from Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton for hiring and promoting more minorities than anyone. Any businessman, and minorities and women that were not educated, just people who had street smarts. And bumped them up, gave them higher salaries and higher positions. And they gave him an award for this. So clearly he's not racist. And they asked him, could you find us a building for the Rainbow Coalition? He not only found it, he gave it to them. He didn't say, all right, here's the building, now you have to pay for it, or you have to pay me rent. No, he just said, here, I bought this building for you. Really? He's doing such a bad job at being a racist. Anybody who is a racist wouldn't be voting for him. So this killing is ridiculous. See, this killing and these riots, this is just the KKK. And the KKK model is the model for Nazism. And the Khmer Rouge, who killed half of Cambodia on the killing fields. That's what's happening right now. That's what's going on. This is the new KKK. They're not. Otherwise, Black lives would matter. They would be marching in Chicago. They'd be going to all these cities and marching. Stop killing each other. No, it's from the beginning. It's been about first. What's his name? There's the white Hispanic. Trayvon Martin was killed by the white Hispanic. I've never heard of that before, white Hispanic. Usually just Hispanic, right? Doesn't matter what shade of skin you're Hispanic. He's also a quarter Black, too, by the way, George, is it George Martin? I forget. No, he's the director. No, he's the manager of the Beatles. That's when BLM started. But it wasn't about, they don't care about abortions. There's more Black babies aborted. In fact, if all these babies weren't aborted, it's quite possible that Blacks would not be a minority. They would be half and half, because babies have babies, right? So you take that a number and you just say babies have babies, and they wouldn't be a minority, But they're not for that, and they're not for stopping all this killing. And if Black lives mattered, why weren't they furious at those two Black men that were killed? Well, one was killed and the other one was stabbed, hoping he would die, by ANTIFA and BLM, are about the same thing. There's no difference. Why didn't they care? Oh, because it was on the other side, he's a Trump supporter. Just like the KKK went out and lynched 1/3 of the people that they lynched, which is over 1,000. You just 1/3 of 4,669. 1/3 of that were white Republicans and Italians. I always say Italians because people forget that whites, and it wasn't just Blacks that were singled out, but it was also Melungeons like Elvis and Abraham Lincoln. And it's funny that they're related. That is kind of interesting that they're actually related. He's related to his grandfather, Abraham Lincoln's because Abraham Lincoln really, his descendants kind of died off. But Barack Obama, you see, the truth is they were calling him our first African-American president. Before, if you elect him, he'll be our first African-American president. That's what they were saying. He was already being touted that. So the interesting thing about that is, if you look at America and how racist it was, how racist was this nation? Okay. He didn't get one vote from the South because he was going to get rid of slavery. Because that was when after we won the revolution, the founding father said, the first thing we have to do is get rid of slavery. It just doesn't belong in the kind of country that we have. Look, South, you've got 20 years to get rid of it. They didn't, so we had to fight the war. So without getting one vote from the South. That's the reason why that they didn't want to let Texas into the Union, because Texas would be another. It annexed itself from Mexico. It's fought a war with Mexico and broke itself off from Mexico and wanted to join the United States, but the United States North didn't want Texas because it would make the slave states more powerful. So not getting one vote from the South, this man won the election. Being hated by all these Democrats, KKK members, who went out and terrorized and killed people. Riots, you could say, burn things down, just like we're seeing now. He didn't get one vote. And he was being touted as the first African-American president because Frederick Douglass knew that he was Melungeon. So we kind of forget, just because he had blue eyes, Melungeons had blue eyes and dark skin, that he was only 1/3 white. That's not biracial. That's, you could say, that's as American could possibly be. Part African American, part Native American, and part white. The three people that came together, the people of the world that came together and formed this country and mixed together. And the man never went to college. He read books, and that's how he became a lawyer. So you say to yourself, well, you can't say with Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, with these people who were extremely intelligent and came out of slavery and started a university, how can you possibly say it? Well, that's what the Democrats say. No, you keep needing welfare. You have to live in these inner cities. It's not going to get better for you. You will always be a victim. And Booker T. Washington, who was a slave, said, stop calling yourself a victim. You're a slave. I was a slave. That's the past. Go forward into the future. This is America. And he was good friends with Teddy Roosevelt. Well, what do you think the reason why they pulled down Teddy Roosevelt's statue for? Is because he was in the same thinking. His statue was with a Native American and Booker T. Washington. They pulled that down. All three were standing equal, and he was maintaining the wild lands to have these national parks so the land would never be built on. And that kind of, it was his concession or his gift to the Native Americans that this beauty that America would be preserved. So what do they pull down? They pull down those statues. What do they pull down? They pull down Abraham Lincoln statues. So why do this? Because, see, the people who are not Democrats voted for somebody. See, then there wasn't any TV, obviously. There was just newspapers. And you read about these people. And so if there was something like this person is black or part black and part Native American and part Scottish, right? And you read that and you were some kind of racist, you probably wouldn't vote for Abraham Lincoln, would you? How the heck did he get elected? How did Abraham Lincoln get elected when it wasn't a secret that he was a Melungeon? Oh, talking like Italian. It wasn't a secret that he was Melungeon. How racist was America back then? Yes, the Democrats, the KKK was in the North and the South. the KKK in the North and the South, and the entire South did not vote for him because they were all racist. But he got enough votes to become president, even though everyone knew he was mixed. Which means America is not this racist thing from the and built on racism and built on the backs of the slaves. No, the South was built that way. The Democrats, who are still doing the same thing, it's like, you know that the brown shirts were killed the night of the long knives. They were all killed. You had to kill them because they were criminals. They were out of control. They were crazed, and they weren't that smart. And then Mao killed the Red Guard, and Stalin killed the Red Army. And because you have to bring order back. You can't have, because Hitler got his SS, and his SS were very disciplined, and they were just there from the time they woke up, the time they went to bed, and they kept themselves fit, and they wore those uniforms that were spanking clean. They weren't crazed and out of control kind of thing, and they weren't criminals. They obeyed orders. You see, they were different. Even though what they were doing was criminal, they were obedient. You see, it's a whole different thing. So they had to kill off the brown shirts. So we've got these groups. The same thing is happening, and what they want to do is to definitely to take over this country and make it Marxist. But it's a different kind of Marxism, because Marx believed in the worker and that people worked and had their leisure time. These people are being sold. And you listen to Ocasio-Cortez. No, we should never. No, don't go back to work. Don't go back to that. It's this whole idea that if you join us, we'll pay you to riot. We'll pay you to beat people up and kill and destroy and loot. And you won't have to work. That's what Marxism is. You'll get paid to do nothing. This is the new kind of Marxism, which is, we know this is BS. You see, because we're smarter than they are. This is BS. Because once they've taken over, once Marxism, this globalism, which is communism, takes over, they have to get rid of those kinds of people. They're not going to pay them to do nothing. And you can't have people who are crazed and out of control. You can't have, there's a reason why you put criminals in jail. The rapists, the pedophiles, the people, mass murderers, because you can't, the people who are the leaders, they don't want to get killed. They don't want anything happening to them. They don't want to be robbed. So these people don't realize that they're not going to get paid to sit around and do nothing. Lest they open up a history book, which it's being, history is being annihilated now. And find out what happened in all these. See, they don't know that fascism is actually socialism, which is communism. They have no idea. So what do you think? Isn't that amazing about Abraham Lincoln? This country, that's how racist this country was. Nobody thought about it. Nobody thought about it. They read what he said, and they said, this guy's smarter than this guy. This guy, we want to the North really wanted to get rid of slavery in the South. That's why they didn't want to let Texas into the Union, because they didn't want to make the slave states stronger. The North, the people who were against slavery, wanted to eradicate it. That's why they voted Abraham Lincoln into office. The new party, the Republican Party, the party of abolition, and the party that has always fought, even the Voting Act in 1965, the Democrats fought, filibustered, not just civil rights in 1964. And right after the Civil War, they filibustered the Civil Rights Act too. They stopped that. They didn't vote for the civil rights back then, and they put a stopper on it. And the only people who voted for it were the Republicans. And when women wanted to vote, because finally, see, women, the whole women thing, the reason why there was a law that said that if you vote, you have to be a part of the brigade, to put out fires, or if there's a war, you have to go to war. And women didn't want to do that, so they were very happy not voting. And then it came to a point where the women wanted to vote. And they said, okay, that's all right. You don't have to go to war, and you don't have to be a part of the fire brigade, but you can vote. And the Democrats voted it down, the women's right to vote. And so it kind of makes your head spin. Why do all these women? Oh, because of abortion. All right. Oh, yeah. Why do all these women are Democrats? But the reason why the Democrats, and it wasn't the Republicans, except the women will tell you it was the Republicans, it was the Democrats. And the reason why, here's the reason, it's really funny. Voted that down, would not let the women vote because they found out that the women wanted to vote Federalist. If they found out they wanted to vote Republican, they would give them the right to vote. So what are they doing now? They're taking away, they're making people who want to vote for Trump, who love America, who are not racist, afraid to vote. That's like taking your vote away. It's like you had it, but they're taking it away because they want people to be scared when they go to the polls. Like they're going to get hurt. They could get killed. If it comes out that you're supporting Trump, you could get killed. You could get robbed. Your house could burn down. It's the same thing as not giving you the right to vote, except it's even worse because it's the same thing as what the KKK did, which is what Hitler patterned. Hitler patterned his brown shirts, his whole movement after was the KKK, was the Democrats. So we have to be, we have to know the truth about America. If America wasn't racist and voted in Abraham Lincoln and wanted to end slavery, and Barack Obama, I'm sure, is behind that. Also the Democrat Party, because they want to say they put the first African-American, not descendant of slaves. His father came from Africa, which means his father came from a tribe that won the war, because the tribes, and the Arabians are still taking Africans as slaves. It's not just Africans enslaving other Africans. The Arabians are still enslaving Africans. And they started doing it 1,400 years ago and killed 200 million of them because they made eunuchs out of the men, and 1 out of 30 bled to death. So there's a genocide right now that's occurring in Africa where tribes are wiping out other tribes completely because they're not bringing them to the shore and selling them as slaves. But they probably are selling them as slaves because the Arabians are taking them, as well as other Black Africans are taking them. But they are committing genocide as well in Africa. And a huge number of Africans are enslaved. So our past on slavery is entirely the Democrat Party, was entirely the South. And also there were Black slave owners. There's 10,000 Black slaves that were owned by Black slave owners. Just like, the one whose mother is a Brahmin. And she's the one who slept her way to the top. Her father is Black. They came from the Caribbean, but he was British, and they owned slaves. Kamala Harris. She's becoming so, what do you call it, when somebody is no longer has any meaning. Hello there, Texas Shepherd. Nice to see you again. God, she makes my brain stop. But there were black people that owned slaves because they were of a different class. They were of an upper class. And the KKK didn't go against them and try to kill them. It's like, are you for the Democrats? Are you for this system? Or are you against this system? That's what it is. In Nazism, if you put the Nazi Party first above your religion, above God, then that was okay with them. Even there was even Jews that were a part of the Nazi army. It's hard to believe, but it's true. In Russia, there was no God at all whatsoever. Just like what's happening here, the Supreme Court just had a decision that even churches are still going to be closed or social distance. Be very careful because they'd rather not have you go to church. They're trying to eradicate religion altogether, but they're allowing these riots to occur. And that's the Supreme Court. And Roberts, it really should come out. See, Roberts adopted the reason why he's doing this, and he voted for. First, he said he wasn't going to vote for Obamacare, and then he made it a tax. All of a sudden, overnight, he voted for it. It's because he adopted 2 children from Latin America, but it was like they weren't from Latin America. They were from Ireland, and it's against the law to adopt children from Ireland. So it's like there's a word for it, a cutout. It's a cutout. They used Latin America as a cutout. So on the papers wouldn't say adopted from Ireland. But if you look at his children, they're from Ireland. So they probably gave him an offer he couldn't refuse. And it seems like that all these Democrats, knowing what's going on, Jerry Nadler saying, oh, no, Antifa isn't doing that, totally denying the riots. How could you be that dense? How could you be that dense? Well, looking at Jerry Nadler, I can see how you can be that dense. They're all pretending, Schumer, they're all pretending that this isn't happening. And there are people who don't read all the news but just listen to the Democrats and think that this isn't happening. It's peaceful protests. And Trump is trying to stop peaceful protests. They believe that. And for every lie that they've told, there's been a white person beaten up or a black person beaten up and killed. They've incited hate in a great number of the population that has caused violence, not just burning down and destroying buildings, looting, but actual physical violence against people. The Democrat Party are evil. They're evil. They're doing the same thing now as the KKK did. And that's the Democrat Party. And that was evil. There's no difference. And they want one-party rule as they wanted it then. They wanted to annex themselves from America. They wanted to be their own nation. Maybe we should have let them go. But you see, if we let them go, then these African slaves and people who are considered black would suffer under that tyranny. So they had to do something. That's why they fought the Civil War, to keep it a part of the Union so they can eradicate this tyranny from the Union. Because if we let them go, well, it would be a lot like other parts of the world. It's usually the third world. It's great majorities, non-white, non-Christian countries. Definitely none of them are Christian countries. And yeah, none of them are white, except for the people who come over the border, who are sold into sex slavery. But you see how the Democrats don't care about sex slavery, human trafficking, slavery in this country. You notice that? They didn't care about it. They didn't care about it when we had slavery in the South. That slavery existed. They wanted to keep it. And then when it was abolished, they went out and killed and destroyed and tortured people and lynched people. So they don't care what's happening over the border. They don't care about all the drugs coming over and all the people dying. They don't care that this COVID thing, which it's really gone too far. And people are committing suicide. People are dying of overdoses. They don't care about that. What's the difference, I ask you? What's the difference between the Democrat Party during slave times and Jim Crow? The Democrat Party now. How could it be different? Robert C. Byrd died in 2011. And he was the grand exalted cyclops of the KKK. And they put his statue up in the Capitol Rotunda. And Barack, biracial President Obama, as well as Bill Clinton, eulogized him. The KKK has never been eradicated. That thinking has never been eradicated. When all those millions of American boys were sent off to die in World War II and save the world and save America to preserve the freedom of America, they didn't care that they died because they're still trying to destroy this country. They died to preserve freedom. A lot of them were Democrat, but didn't really know the history of the Democrat Party. But little did they know, the Democrat Party doesn't care that all those millions and millions of men died. And they freed the people who are being killed at Auschwitz. I don't want to go into any detail of that. You know what happened there. They're spitting in the face of every boy, of every person that died in every war that was fought to preserve freedom. Spitting their face. 22 soldiers commit suicide every day. Why haven't we stopped that? Why don't they care about that? Of course they don't care about that. They vote Republican. They vote Trump. The veterans dying of COVID, somehow that went like wildfire through the VA and the soldiers' home, and they can't stop it. They vote Republican because these men put their life on the line to preserve this nation. And it's the generals that become politicians, you see. That's what a general does. They become politicians, and they can get bought off after they retire. You get money. You get money. But it was Obama that destroyed the military. 8 years of that. 8 years of that. Every single day. That's all I could see. It's like somebody put a knife in my gut and kept twisting it and twisting it. Every time I heard what he was doing, kept twisting it. He's breaking it beyond, we cannot put this back together. He's destroyed the whole military. He's destroying the country. He's destroying the schools. This Howard Zinn's new history of the world. That's why all these kids hate America. He signed that in to the education system. So the kids would learn from that. And it's all lies. But the Democrat Party fashioned him. He was already a socialist, but they fashioned him. Said he, in 2004, he made that big speech at the Democrat convention before he went on stage. Chuck U. Schumer said that there goes our first African-American president. They were grooming him and his family to be the perfect. So you have to destroy, so he destroyed the nation so he can be the new, not just John F. Kennedy and MLK, but new Abraham Lincoln, freeing the slaves. These people are legends beyond legends. And the only way you can make yourself that kind of legend is to destroy the old legends and break whatever they fixed. So you can be the new one and they can put your statue up. Whatever. But I called it when I saw it. First time I saw him, I go, But I did, when he got elected, I did hope. I did hope that he would be good. And I was wrong about it. He's smart and maybe he'll do something good. Maybe we can survive this 4 or 8 years. I still hope for the best. You see, there's a difference. So let's see. We've got Texas Shepherd here. Can't stay but smash that like button. Texas Shepherd always says this. Okay. Shilly Billy. BLM equals BOL. Oh my God. Okay, well, an inverted reality to be exact. Actual white supremacists hate Trump because of his support of Israel. You need not look any further than Reddit, 4chan, or BitChute to see this in action. Well, they've all claimed to be supporters of Israel. You know, Hillary was, because Hillary is half Jewish, you know. Her father, Rodham, she's half Jewish. And all the Democrats, and even Bill Clinton, he was a friend of Israel. They were all friends of Israel. And every single one of them said that they were going to make Jerusalem the capital. When they're in office, they're friends of Israel. Before they're in office, they're friends of Israel. To get that vote. So, whereas Trump actually did something about it. He actually did make Jerusalem the capital. And we moved our embassy to Jerusalem. But all of them have claimed to be friends of Israel because they want the Jewish vote. They want all the votes. They want the Jewish vote. EA is saying, how's everyone doing? That's very nice. Hello there, Mari. There is at home hospice. We had my dad on that. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I mean, he might not need hospice. I almost think, because you see, there's so many nursing homes that if COVID is going through like wildfire, because they've put people with COVID, and what's his name, Andrew Cuomo, he's responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths because he put people with COVID into the nursing homes. He told the nursing homes they had to take them. They had to take them. So they did. So the elderly people died. So there is this particular place is the only place that has kept COVID out. So everybody wants to go to this place. They're probably going to pay big bucks if they can get a place, a bed in this place. And I almost think they're trying to say, well, he's really weak or he's not eating. Let's make an excuse to have him die so we can get money, because we don't have that kind of money. And I think that's what it is. I really do. Because out of all the nursing homes, this is the only one that doesn't have any COVID. Just kept COVID out. And since they're full, and you would think everybody would want to leave the nursing home they're in and go there. And they would pay the big bucks for it. So that's why I think this is far. So I told my sister, she would poo-poo that, but come on, think about this for a second. And they used to be really good. They used to be the best, but they're not anymore. They've really gone downhill, but they've kept COVID out. See, Bruce O'Brien, sad but true, silly Billy. Let's see, let me see if I can go all the way up here to the beginning. Okay, Bruce said greetings. And Hoya, silly Billy, and Bruce O'Brien, it's dangerous to be black and conservative. That's right. See, where is the news talking about these? No, nobody's talking about these black people that are killed by Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Nobody's talking about it. I hope the man that was stabbed lives, but one of them, he was on TV talking about being a black Trump supporter, and he went out in the street and was shot by an Antifa member. What does that do? If you're black and you are supporting Trump, either you secretly support Trump or you don't out of fear. I mean, if they don't kill you, they'll kill someone you love. You do our bidding. That's exactly what the KKK did. You join us or you die. That's who they are. Don't call Trump. You go, what idiot? Which idiot was it in the Congress or Senate? It's usually the real idiots are in the Congress. Said that Trump is he's the head of the KKK. He wants to be the head of the KKK. I mean, it's like, and people believe it. God, if America could get the truth and wake up and see these Democrats for who they are and vote them out of office. But I'm afraid that with this mail-in voting, and they say that you can 2 weeks after the election day, that means you can, how much more do we need to make up like they do in California? It takes them 3 months. 3 months, that's why she got 3 million, $1 million a month, 3 million more than Trump. But it took them 3 months to count the votes. My voting station it's a piece of paper, and you take a black pen, and there's an arrow, you fill in the middle of the arrow, and then you put it in this machine, and it rolls it in, and it counts all the votes. It's already counted. So don't tell me that at 2016, Los Angeles and San Francisco, or we won't use the word for what they were, but they still had voting machines that were very high tech. Compared to my town, everything in California is very high tech. So if in my town, the machine, it's a very small machine. It's like a little copier. If that can tally the vote instantly, Of course, by the end of the night, you know who your senator is, who the congressperson is, who the low-level city whatever is. That's counted immediately. But somehow it takes them forever to count the president. It's all going into the same machine. They're all being voted, and they're all being tabulated at the same time. That's why this is bogus. That's why they're making up votes. But we did find that out in Michigan. That's why they stopped Jill Stein's recount on behalf of Hillary Clinton. Because they found the box said 1,500 votes for Hillary. Inside the box, there were only 50 votes. They're taking the ballot and putting it through 7 to 10 times. So this time, they've got to say, okay, we got 2 weeks. Every single state needs to make X amount of votes up in the next 2 weeks. You know what? Why don't you just start making up your fake votes now? Because all the votes, when they go in, it's mailed in, they're anonymous. They don't know who the heck. They're anonymous. So why don't you just start now? Why have 2 weeks afterwards? Just in case you think you can't make enough between now and election day, you need an extra 2 weeks. And California has 3 months. You've got all the time in the world to make up your fake votes. But we have to, the people of America, and it's sad, it's just sad that they're not getting the right news. They're not listening to all the news. I listen to all the news. You pretty much, the left, it's so stupid, and you know what they're going to say, that you don't even need to listen to much to know what that side is saying. And then Joe Biden and the kids jumping on his lap and how he loves kids jumping on his lap. And he calls them roaches, which is a slang. Right there. Do you know what that means? Calling children roaches. That's right out of the KKK. That is a racist term. And it's on tape everywhere. And nobody says, no, what I hear is, oh, he's not a racist. He's a sweet old man. Or doesn't have dementia. He's a sweet old man. Well, look, I listen to the stuff he says, and it gives me the willies. We've seen on TV, on the computer, anywhere, him kissing and touching the hair of little girls and their fathers and grandparents, trying to pull them away from him because he's so sick and disgusting. But these Democrats have to ignore what they are seeing. They have to ignore the truth because they must get the Democrat in. Otherwise, the Republicans are racist. They're so automatically, when you're programmed, they're so programmed to vote Democrat that they can't do it any other way. These old hippies, what they thought the Democrat Party was when they saw John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, they thought that Martin Luther King was a Democrat. And she's his cousin. You see her a lot. She's a Republican. She's a Trump supporter. I forget her name. And she said that he was a Republican, but he never said what he actually was. But it makes sense, because why would he be a Democrat when he was fighting Jim Crow South, which was the Democrat-run South, which was the KKK? So why would he be that? Of course he would be for the party of abolishing slaves. So let me see if there's anything new that has come in. No. Oh, hello there, Amy. Amy's back on. So let's see. Okay. So I think I will end the stream now because I've been talking long enough. And Anyway, I have a miserable day tomorrow. I don't want to make that decision about my father. Because I think it's wrong. Cognitively, he's got everything going on up there. I know I'm talking to my father. He almost died in the hospital of sepsis shock because for over a month he had a urinary tract infection and they never let us know. And they were only treating that. He had a secondary infection they weren't treating. They should have sent him to the hospital. But so he's weaker now. But his brain came back all the way 100%. And usually that doesn't happen because it shuts your organs down and it affects the brain. It's like like one of the organs. But his brain is back 100%. So it's like, give the guy a little time, you know. Anyway, I'm not looking forward to tomorrow. But it was so good that you joined me tonight. And took me a while to get on this other Chromebook, which I thought was going to be better. It won't let me go live stream. I don't know why. But anyway, good night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope I sounded coherent. Okay. Good night, everyone. Love to all of you. Really.